October 25, 2025. In a move that has stunned the world, Hungary and Austria have officially joined the BRICS economic bloc, breaking ranks with the European Union. This is the first time BRICS has reached into the heart of Europe, fracturing EU unity and challenging the Western-led global order. The joint announcement from Budapest and Vienna has sparked disbelief, condemnation, and in some corners, quiet applause. For Hungary and Austria, this is a bold gamble, prioritizing national interests over old alliances, and betting on a new global power structure. The world is watching as the old certainties vanish, replaced by a new, unpredictable reality. BRICS began as a group of emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa, seeking to challenge Western dominance. In 2025, BRICS expanded to include Egypt, Iran, Indonesia, and now for the first time, 2 EU members, Hungary and Austria. The bloc now represents over half the world's population and a combined economic might that rivals the West. BRICS offers cooperation without the political strings of Western aid, building its own financial systems and promoting trade in local currencies. With Hungary and Austria on board, BRICS is no longer just an emerging force. It's a direct competitor to the G7. The global balance of power has shifted. Hungary's decision to join BRICS is not a sudden move, but rather the result of a long and complex history of friction with Brussels. Over the past decade, Hungary has found itself increasingly at odds with the European Union, clashing over issues ranging from migration policy to rule of law disputes and economic sovereignty. These tensions have only deepened as the EU has pushed for greater integration and uniformity among its member states, often leaving Hungary feeling sidelined and misunderstood. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has been the driving force behind Hungary's so-called Eastern Opening policy, which seeks to diversify the country's economic and diplomatic ties beyond the West. This strategy is rooted in a desire for greater independence and resilience, especially as Hungary faces mounting pressure from Brussels to conform to EU standards. Orbán's government has actively courted investment and partnerships with countries like China, Russia, and Turkey, laying the groundwork for a pivot towards the BRICS bloc. Austria, meanwhile, has been grappling with the fallout from EU sanctions on Russia, which have sent energy prices soaring and threatened the stability of its economy. As a country heavily dependent on Russian natural gas and oil, Austria has found itself in a precarious position, struggling to secure affordable energy supplies while maintaining its commitments to the EU. For Vienna, joining BRICS represents a potential lifeline, an opportunity to access new energy sources, expand trade, and reduce its vulnerability to external shocks. Both Hungary and Austria have grown increasingly frustrated with EU policies that in their view prioritize US geopolitical interests over the economic well-being of European citizens. The perception that Brussels is more concerned with transatlantic solidarity than with the unique challenges facing its own members has fueled a sense of alienation in Budapest and Vienna. This discontent has only intensified as the EU has doubled down on its support for Ukraine, imposing costly sanctions and diverting resources away from domestic priorities. The economic consequences of these policies have been severe. Across Europe, growth has stagnated, factories have shuttered, and the cost of living has soared. For Hungary and Austria, the burden of supporting Ukraine, both financially and politically, has become increasingly difficult to justify, especially as their own economies struggle to recover from the pandemic and energy crisis. Faced with mounting public discontent and a bleak economic outlook, both governments have begun to look for alternatives outside the traditional Western sphere. By seeking closer ties with BRICS, Hungary and Austria hope to position themselves as bridges between East and West. They are betting that access to new markets, investment, and resources will help revitalize their economies and give them greater leverage on the world stage. This move is not without risks. Joining BRICS could strain relations with their traditional allies in the EU and NATO, and expose them to new geopolitical uncertainties. But for Budapest and Vienna, the potential rewards outweigh the dangers. Ultimately, Hungary and Austria's decision to align with BRICS is a high-stakes gamble on a rapidly changing world order. As global power shifts away from the West and towards emerging economies, these two countries are hoping to secure a seat at the table and shape the future of international relations. Whether this bold strategy will pay off or leave Hungary and Austria more isolated than ever remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the choices they make now will have far-reaching consequences for their place in Europe and the world. The entry of Hungary and Austria into BRICS is a direct challenge to the post-Cold War order. The EU faces an existential crisis, forced to manage two members now aligned with a rival bloc. This could paralyze EU decision-making and accelerate the rise of a two-speed Europe. Globally, the world is splitting into two camps, the G7-led West and the BRICS-led Global South, now with European partners. Unaligned nations may see this as a chance for more flexible foreign policy. BRICS, now more diverse and influential, can demand greater say in global institutions. The era of uncontested Western leadership is over. The economic fallout is immediate. Tariffs, trade wars, and uncertainty ripple across the globe. Markets react with panic, and investors scramble to make sense of the new reality. The interconnectedness of the world economy, once a source of stability, now amplifies the shockwaves. Every headline, every policy announcement sends tremors through financial centers from New York to Shanghai. President Trump, in a dramatic move, threatens a sweeping 10% tariff on all countries aligning with BRICS. This ultimatum forces governments and corporations to make difficult choices. Do they risk American retaliation, or do they seek new alliances? The threat is not just economic, it's deeply political, reshaping diplomatic ties and global supply chains overnight. The European Union, already weakened by the ongoing Ukraine conflict and internal divisions, finds itself caught in the crossfire. Its trade policy, once a model of integration, is now in disarray. European leaders scramble to respond, holding emergency meetings as industries from automotive to agriculture brace for impact. The uncertainty leaves businesses hesitant to invest, and consumers wary of rising prices. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods have soared, making imports more expensive and disrupting established supply chains. American retailers and manufacturers face shortages and higher costs, while Chinese exporters search for new markets. Meanwhile, India faces new penalties for importing Russian oil, complicating its energy security and straining its diplomatic balancing act. In response, BRICS nations accelerate efforts to build a parallel economic system. They increase trade in local currencies, bypassing the US dollar, and strengthen financial ties through the new development bank. This new framework offers an alternative to Western-dominated institutions, giving member countries more autonomy and resilience in the face of sanctions and tariffs. The world is fragmenting into competing economic spheres. Old alliances are tested, and new blocs emerge, each with its own rules and priorities. The era of a single, unified global market is giving way to a patchwork of rival systems, each vying for influence and resources. The era of free-flowing global trade is fading fast. Ports that once bustled with activity now stand eerily quiet. Supply chains that spanned continents are breaking down, leaving goods stranded and businesses uncertain about the future. Protectionism is the new normal. Nations are raising barriers, prioritizing self-sufficiency over cooperation. The world economy, once defined by openness and integration, is entering a new era, one marked by division, caution, and the constant threat of economic conflict. The expanded BRICS bloc now represents over 4 billion people, an astonishing figure that accounts for more than half of the world's entire population. This immense demographic weight gives BRICS a unique influence on global trends, from consumer markets to labor forces and even cultural exports. The sheer diversity within BRICS, spanning continents and cultures, means its voice is not just loud, but also richly varied and increasingly hard to ignore on the world stage. In contrast, the European Union, with its population of just 450 million, represents a much smaller slice of humanity. While the EU is still a major player, its demographic influence is waning as populations age and growth slows. The difference in scale between these two blocs is striking, and it's reshaping the balance of global power. While the EU's population is just 450 million, it faces challenges of an aging society and declining birth rates, which could impact its future economic vitality and global influence. In terms of economic power, BRICS is surging ahead. When measured by purchasing power parity, the combined GDP of BRICS countries is nearly double that of the EU. This economic clout is not just about numbers, it translates into real-world influence over global trade, investment flows, and even the direction of technological innovation. The bloc controls vast reserves of natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, and agricultural products, making it a dominant force in global commodity markets. Meanwhile, the EU's traditional strengths lie in its single market, regulatory power, and advanced technology sectors which have long set global standards and driven innovation. However, the EU now faces growing internal divisions, political disagreements, and economic stagnation. These challenges threaten its ability to act as a unified force on the world stage, making it more vulnerable to external competition and less agile in responding to global shifts. BRICS, on the other hand, is more diverse than ever before, but its members are united by a shared ambition to reshape the global order and challenge the dominance of Western-led institutions. This unity, despite differences in language, culture, and political systems, is a powerful force for change. The inclusion of Hungary and Austria gives BRICS a direct link into the heart of the Western system, opening new channels for trade, diplomacy, and influence within Europe itself. This move could have far-reaching consequences for the future of both blocs. Ultimately, the global power play between BRICS and the EU is about much more than just numbers. It's a contest of strategic positioning, alliances, and the ability to shape the rules of the international system for decades to come. With its latest expansion and bold moves on the world stage, BRICS has just made a masterful play, one that could redefine the future of global power and influence. The US has responded with condemnation and aggressive economic retaliation. President Trump's administration is imposing punitive tariffs on any nation aligning with BRICS, including a 10% tariff on all their exports to the US. Hungary and Austria, heavily reliant on exports, face devastating consequences. Washington is also threatening 100% tariffs on any BRICS nation that challenges the US dollar. The US is rewarding loyal allies with trade deals, while punishing dissenters with sanctions. This hardline approach risks pushing more countries toward BRICS and accelerating efforts to build an alternative economic system. The stakes for global allegiance have never been higher. For ordinary Europeans, the new reality means higher prices and economic uncertainty. Tariffs make goods like Chinese electric cars and solar panels more expensive, slowing green transitions and squeezing family budgets. In Hungary and Austria, hopes for cheaper energy and new export markets are tempered by the threat of US tariffs. In BRICS countries, there's optimism, more jobs, new infrastructure, and a sense of empowerment. But barriers are rising. Students face visa hurdles. Entrepreneurs struggle with disrupted supply chains. The world is less connected, and opportunities depend more than ever on your country's alliances. The dream of a globalized world is fading. Fragmentation is the new reality. Europe stands at a crossroads, its unity shattered by Hungary and Austria's defection to BRICS. The EU must choose, take a hard line and risk further exits, or allow more autonomy and risk becoming a loose confederation. The old order, one dominant superpower, one unified West, is gone. A multipolar world is emerging, with new risks and opportunities. The transition is turbulent, but could lead to a more balanced global system. The choices made now in Washington, Brussels, Beijing, Budapest, and Vienna will shape the future. The fate of Europe and the world hangs in the balance.